Hey everybody, Coach Stacy Lynn here. So today I want to talk to you about mistakes that both coaches and a lot of therapists make. So if you don't know who I am, I want to thank you for clicking on that button so that you can learn a little bit here about who I am and what I do. I'm Coach Stacy Lynn Harp. I'm a certified master Christian life coach, and I spent years doing therapy as well. Don't do therapy now, did 20 years ago. Been coaching for the last 5 or 6 years, actually. But in between that time, I spent like 20 years doing Christian media. So I have had my fair share of learning things, some would say maybe even the hard way. So I'm going to talk to you today about something that honestly you will won't hear unless you're in the mental health field, you're in supervision circles and things like that. And that is why dual relationships are wrong. So first, let me clarify a couple of different things. First, being a therapist is considerably different than being a coach. Um, and I'll just outline those in case you don't know, because there's people that really don't know. So if you're a therapist, usually you have a master's degree or a PhD or a PsyD. So you're a psychologist. Uh, if you're a psychologist is a doctor, technically a doctor, although they have changed some of that recently. So I'm not going to get into that. Bottom line is you have at least a master's degree to be a therapist. And therapists generally are tied to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which is coming out again, the sixth version, and it's going to be a living document. They actually recently said that it's going to be a living document where they can update diagnoses and all this other fun stuff. So if you're a therapist, you're going to be trained in the DSM. You're going to be forced to diagnose somebody, and you will be able to take insurance and bill people and recommend people go to a psychiatrist to get medication, um, and all of that. So it's a very medical model. It's also a modality thing where people often they take you into the past, dark recesses of your mind, no, and your childhood, and they dig through all that. And that's the stereotype anyway. Actually, a lot has changed since I was trained 20 plus years ago. So, but the bottom line is a therapist will take insurance. They'll talk to you about your past. Many of them will help you stay in the past and stay there forever stuck. And often, many unethical ones will use witchcraft with you, tarot cards. They'll integrate New Age spirituality. They will advocate against God's purposes. I'm speaking as a Christian here, by the way. They won't let you help people who want help with certain issues. And it is really a field that has been corrupted by liberal politics, the American Psychological Association, and all of the above, which is why a lot of Christians have left and or have transitioned to being coaches. Now, here's the other thing. When you're a licensed therapist, you have to do at least a few thousand hours. In the state of California, you have to do 3,000, which is the high end, but other states don't require that. Um, I was trained in California. I did all my hours in California. I did over 3,000. So that's fine. Then you got to take a licensing test. Usually there's two of them. One's on ethics, one's on modality. And in the olden days, there was an oral exam that they gave you too. But when I got licensed or had my intern license 20 plus years ago, there was no oral exam. There was only two written exams. So anyway, long story short, therapy is designed that way. You can take insurance, you got to diagnose and all that. Now, being a coach is completely different. Being a coach, we don't accept insurance. We don't diagnose. No, we don't. We do not give you a diagnosis. We can talk about our faith. We can encourage people to look to the future, to not stay stuck in the past. And we encourage people to look forward. And, I happen to use a assessment that I'm trained in. I'm a trained equipping profile coach. And that assessment gives me a snapshot of how people think. It looks at 10 different things and all of that. So I work with people. Whereas I understand all the therapy stuff, as a coach, I work with people to help them move forward because to me, being stuck is really irritating. And I know because I've gone through my own journey. I went through my own journey, and I, even now at 57, am still being coached. I went through my years of therapy, working through my childhood trauma. And now at 57 years old, I'm still being coached by people and mentored. So there is no shame in having people help you, right? But I'm going to tell you, there are two big things that are discussed in the therapy world and the coaching world. Um, and I want to address those. Okay, let's just pretend you're a clinician, you're a coach, or you're a therapist. I'm going to tell you, all of you, where the field really struggles. Number one, people who don't do their own work is a big, huge issue. Okay. And what I mean by that is most of the people, and this has actually been proven, it's not a big secret, most of the people who become therapists are doing it because they've been hurt, right? And they're like, hey, I want to help somebody. So I'm going to go and I'm going to get licensed and I'm going to help somebody. In fact, if you know who Dr. Janina Fisher is, and some of you may, some of you might not, but she's a really well renowned trauma expert. And one of the things I heard her say once is that when she's asked the clinicians that she's trained, um, how many of you are here because you were hurt? Like 99% of them raise their hand, right? But here's the issue, a lot of these folks don't actually do their work. And that is the problem. Because if you're working with a coach or a therapist who hasn't done their own work, and what I mean by that is they're reactive to you. They bring their problems into your session where you're paying them. They don't understand how they're coming off to you in an and they just don't know, right? And a lot of people are like, well, why do I have to have 5 million hours of training? That's why. And I'm going to tell you something, 3,000 hours in my mind isn't even enough because for me, it took me 1,500 hours to understand why I needed 3,000 when I was in the training. Today, I'm in these groups on Facebook with therapists and they are whining and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, and you're trying to help somebody?" I have a video of a trained therapist flipping out with me in a meeting when I asked her something about her life. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you do that? You're going to damage everybody on the planet you work with." If you want to really see how bad therapists are, go to Reddit. Look at the therapist forums over on Reddit. And I'm not throwing all therapists under the bus, but I will say that that is one of the biggest issues is that they don't do their own work. And so if you're ever in a situation where you're working with somebody and you're feeling like their issues are overtaking yours, then you need to get out of that because that's not going to help you any. I've done my work. Now, me doing my work can trigger somebody, though, who hasn't done their work, which is why being a coach is different than being a therapist. Because being a coach, you have the ability to be more direct with somebody, and I guess essentially to give advice. As a therapist, you're not technically supposed to give advice, but seriously, how many therapists don't do that? I mean, most therapists do it. So, It's just BS if you ever hear anybody say, "Oh, well, therapists never give advice." It's baloney. Almost every therapist gives advice at some point. You can't not. It's part of the bias of it. But one of the other big mistakes people make is in the field is they will get involved in dual relationships. And this is where I have made my mistakes. Um, and I will tell you what I've learned from them, and I will tell you why I am a hard ass now when it comes to my boundaries and working with people and having them in a different area of my life. So here's the thing. Number one, when I was hosting my show Bible News Radio, a lot of people wanted to be my friend because they saw the interviews I did and all that. And my husband has made it known that one of my gifts is making people feel warm, welcomed, and loved. Come here, let's all be friends, you know. And I make friends easy. That's not even an issue for me. But when the relationships start to go over lines, like if you want me to now be your coach, there are only certain things I can do with that, right? I mean, initially, when somebody gets into direct sales, which I've been in, by the way, I will tell you that they tell you the first thing they tell you in direct sales is to make a list of all your friends and then go ahead and try to sell all your stuff to them. You cannot do that with coaching or therapy. You just can't do that. You are not going to sell your services to your friends because that right there will create an imbalance. And unless that person's healthy enough to keep a divide, you can't do it. You just can't do it. And so I made mistakes about 4 or 5 years ago. I was working with a client who I had been friended with. They were involved in some of my ministry, and I really loved working with her. I still love her to this day. But at one point during our coaching, she revealed she was selling drugs to people, like her prescription drugs. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know. ugh. And I had to cut it off. I actually ended the relationship after that because I couldn't ethically see her knowing that she was dealing her prescription drugs to people. True story. And it was difficult because they supported my ministry. I'm like, okay. Um, the other issue that sometimes happens with dual relationships, now they will happen often in ministry with pastors who counsel in churches. Sometimes small towns have a therapist or a coach. They might run groups in local church and go to that church. So certain things can't be avoided in some cases. And for me, that is a an issue now because I have a home church and our home church meets online. And I've had people that I've coached come into it, and I discovered that doesn't work. That does not work because some people they may start coaching with you and they really what they want to do is they want to be your friend. And I actually heard somebody this week, they were actually talking um, about how coaching has grown in prevalence. And part of the familiarity with your coach is that often your clients want to be your friend. And so then lines get blurred and all this other stuff. And this is why I don't chase people. If I have a client that wants to work with me and they're consistent and they want to work, I'm there. I'm there. I will love on you. I will encourage you. I will challenge you. I will make you accountable because that's accountability is part of change. And as a coach, I'm here for your change. I'm not your friend. That's what I heard my friends say. As a coach, I'm here for your change people. I am not your friend. And that has, for me, been one of these issues where it's challenging because I like people and I want everybody to be my friend. But if you hire me to be your coach, I'm not your friend. And I will not actually violate my personal life with the home church anymore or coaching. I just won't do it. Um, yeah, recently I had somebody try to go through that line, and I'm like, nope, can't do it because I already know it doesn't end well. It won't end well for me, and it won't end well for that person. And actually, at this point, I've also determined peop when I go through that, it's like, nope, I won't even coach you because I already know where you're going to go with this, and that's not going to happen either. So I've had to learn the hard way about dual relationships. And so I want to share that with you because I know sometimes it is very alluring and very tempting when you see somebody online and you're thinking about hiring them. Like, oh, well, I might want to be their friend. I'll reach out, maybe I'll do a couple of sessions, and then, then you have that connection. But then, oh, you don't want to pay anymore. So, you know what? Let's just cross that line and be friends. Now we're really good friends, blah, blah. And so that does a disservice to the coach. It's very disrespectful, actually, to the coach, um, because you're not being honest up front, right? And there are people that way. I've been in media for 20 plus years, and I saw it in all my years doing Bible News Radio. Have people befriend me. Oh, and then they'll talk to you. Oh, you got to interview Ben Carson. Oh, you got to talk to Amy Grant. Oh, you know Jan Markell. Oh, all these people that I know. And then all of a sudden they can go, oh, I know somebody who knows them, and I'm in with her. And I'm like, oh, please, God, help me. You know, it's and then here's the other thing. If you wonder why sometimes a coach is maybe distant from you, uh, it's because sometimes people can come on really strong and they are so desperate for a friend that when they find somebody's in the field, they just want to cling on to that person and use them. They might not even be aware they're doing it, but I've had that happen so much, which is why a lot of my friends never tell anybody what they do. But I'm online. Most of my business is online. So it's like hard to hide that. So, for me, my ethics at this point are no, there is no crossing over in dual relationship at all in my life. And where I see fit in my life, what I'm going to do is I'm going to err on the side of extreme caution and protect me because in doing so, I know that that person's not going to get hurt. Because you know what? Parasocial relationships are a real thing. And if you don't know what a parasocial relationship is, what it is you watching me on video thinking that you know me and you're my friend. And then when you contact me and you talk to me, and now we're really buddies. Um, I'm not your buddy. I'm a coach and I'm here for your change, right? Get real or heal. That's up there in my thingy there. So these are some of the mistakes that people make. One of the other big mistakes, and I'll wind this up, that a therapist makes and a client doesn't understand, is when it comes to payment, right? People look at a therapist and or a coach and they'll say, oh, well, they charge so much. Oh, they can work on a sliding scale. They can do blah, blah, blah. And one of the big mistakes, especially new therapists and coaches make, is that they don't value their worth. And so they work on a sliding scale and they go lower than they really should. And the client has this massive misunderstanding because they think that, you know, the therapist or coach is making a gazillion dollars. I'm going to tell you something. The average therapist makes about 50 grand, and that's full time if they're actually doing it. Most therapists don't make that much. I made under 10 grand last year as a coach. Okay. Because I'm new. I'm building my clientele and I'm a nonprofit. And half of that actually was donors. The other half was coaching. So, and that's because I went lower with some people than I should. Now I have an established rate. I have the equivalent of two master's degrees. I have one from a college and I have a certified master Christian life coach certification. So my fees are in line with the state of Tennessee and actually the field. And, but that's another thing that there's no other field that I know of where a client will come in and get ticked off because your rates are too high And then you feel sorry for them, your mistake as the coach and the therapist. Because here's the thing that you have to learn. If you don't have skin in the game in order to change, then you're wasting everybody's time. I could give you all the free stuff, and this is all the stuff you see in marketing. It drives me nuts. It's that old jab, 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 punch thing, or I think that's what it is, jab, jab, punch. I forgot what the book was, but it's basically like, here's some free stuff, here's some free stuff, here's some free stuff. Okay, now pay me. Here's some free stuff, here's some free. Everything I do on this channel is free. Okay, just so you know. You already know what type of communicator I am, just so you know. So if you want to hire me, then you got to pay, right? You don't just go to your doctor and not pay. Well, unless you're on Medicare, but that's the government. But you know what I'm talking about, right? You're not going to go to your hairstylist and go, oh, I'm having a bad life. Oh, can you reduce your payment and, for my hair to get it colored or my nails to get done or blah, blah. No, you shouldn't actually be going to a hairstylist and getting your hair colored if you're that hard off, right? But when it comes to helping people with their mental health, people are that way. And the mistake a coach makes is lowering their fee and devaluing themselves and their expertise. I'm at the point where I'm almost 60 years old. I have a lot of experience under my belt. I have over 30 years of marriage under my belt. I have a lot of education under my belt. And God has given me discernment and a lot of wisdom because I spend a lot of time with Him. And I don't devalue that. And I think God honors that because my clients actually stick around and work. They actually benefit and they change, right? So, and that's the last thing. The last thing is you have to give it time. If you are a client and you're serious about changing, you have to give it time. I used to, when I was doing therapy, one of the questions I would ask is, have you ever seen another therapist? And sometimes I actually ask that now as a coach. I say, have you ever been in therapy? Oh, yeah. Well, how long did you go? 3 times. Okay, you haven't been in therapy. Um, if you've gone to 2 or 3 sessions with a therapist, you haven't been in therapy. If you went to a coach for a few sessions, you haven't been coached. You have to take time and you have to make a decision to get serious and to invest time in your own personal development. At least a year is a good start, right? I mean, this is why a licensed therapist is required thousands of hours of internship, and I think they require like 300 hours of their personal counseling. That's nothing. That is so nothing because you can't learn patterns and all this other stuff. You have to invest time in the relationship that you're building with the therapist and or the coach. And that's a big mistake. Now, therapists get frustrated because they often feel inadequate when a client quits early. And sometimes, frankly, it's the therapist's fault, right? Because they're not educating them. Um, I know I get frustrated when I see somebody and they're doing really, really good, but they're not doing the work. And so I nudge them and then they quit because they don't want to do the work. It's like, okay, don't do the work. And then you'll be stuck. Or you can go to a therapist who will let you be stuck and they keep greasing their palm with your money or your insurance money. Then they'll throw meds at you and then you'll be all doped up forever when God didn't want you to be that way. He wants you to be free, man. He wants you to be free. And He's given us tools to that end. So, anyway, so those are some of the mistakes therapists and coaches make, and also the assumptions of some of the clients. So, I wanted to share all of this because um, people who are struggling in relationships often don't understand where this is coming from. And here's the issue. Sometimes it's difficult to find the right person to work with. I literally had to call 100 people before I found the therapist I ended up working with for a long time. You know what? Sometimes that's what it takes. Sometimes you just have to keep going. And so let me tell you, don't give up. Do not give up on your own development. Don't give up on your own recovery, and don't give up trying to get better. But here's the thing, don't quit when you're in a process and it's getting tough, especially with a coach like me. And here's why, because if you give up, like when the thing gets hard and you're at the wall where there's some big grief or whatever it is, you're just going to be stuck and you're going to be miserable. You're not going to have the joy of overcoming. I remember 30 years ago, it was 30 years ago. Wow. My husband and I were in marriage counseling, overcoming all the garbage that we inherited from our parents. And at one point, we got separated because we needed space. I was dealing with a lot of my anger. We just needed to be in different houses. And so we were for 8 months. He was at his sister's, I was in our apartment. And I remember a session with our marriage counselor that changed me forever. And she was hard on me, man. She was like, you need to, rah, rah, rah." But I look back because I was a butthead back then, and I was like, no, no. And she drew this picture. She said, Stacy, you are right here in your development, your relationship with your husband. You're right here. And she went like this. She said, all you have to do is go over here. You're right here. Just go here. And I didn't give up. I pushed through it. I was so mad, but I did it. I pushed through it. 34 years of marriage this year. That was when I was married, three. Don't give up. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on God directing you and all that. But don't tell yourself excuses either, right? I mean, look, I know change is tough. You know what? But God didn't call us to change. You know what He did? He called us to transformation. And that's what He does. So if you think you're going to change yourself, good luck with that, because you're not. You're not going to. And that's the other area people go, oh, well, no, you're not going to change yourself. The Lord will transform you by the renewing of your mind. So if you want to get better, then work with somebody who is skilled enough to help you and avoid dual relationships with them and pay them what they're worth, right? And spend the time because I guarantee you, I'm a living testimony of it, that if you do it and you do the work, you can overcome this stuff and then you can help other people. Honestly, if somebody told me 30 years ago that I would be here today helping all these people, these women and some men that I work with, I would have laughed at them. I was like, no. There's nobody more humored by my life than me. So, I just want that for you. I don't even know you, but I want you to overcome and I want you to walk in faith and I want you to be real with your stuff and move forward. Every single day, I have to tell you, I battle things every single day. I battle stuff. To this day, I still battle things, but I choose to do things scared and I choose to put skin in the game, you know? So be that person. And I hope you have a better day.